Hello there everyone! Since I've now finished my playthrough of Witcher 3 and have nothing to do with my life, and I spent a rather large amount of time rambling about horse mechanics in said playthrough, I thought I'd make a video about it so I can ramble about them even more, and go into great depth about the details I noticed and whether these are true to life or not. Now, before I begin, just a short disclaimer. I'm not a professional by any means. I'm just drawing on my own experience, and I know that this game is drawing on medieval styles of riding rather than modern, but there is certainly inspiration from both, and much of it is actually pretty similar, so I hope you all enjoy my insights. So the first thing I want to talk about is the horses themselves. In Witcher 3, Roach is actually not very big at all. I'd say if I stood next to her, she's probably around 15 two-hands, or probably even slightly smaller, which is really not that big for a horse, and that's actually pretty true to life. I am an in my spare time polo player, and generally polo ponies tend to be around that size or smaller because you need to be able to reach the ground with your mallet so you can actually hit the ball. And this translates really well into Witcher 3 because you need to be able to hit animals like wild dogs with your sword, and having the horse be smaller definitely allows for that. And it also gives the horse a much more grounded in reality feel, which I think is very in line with the tone of the Witcher games as a whole, given that they're pretty grounded as fantasy goes. I don't really have much to say about the actual movement of the horse, other than that it's really well mocapped, and Roach moves as you would expect a real horse to. She has 4 gaits, walk, trot, canter and gallop, just as the majority of real horses do, and her stride pattern is true to life, which I really like. The next thing I want to talk about is the real cake, the mechanics themselves. So let's start with mounting and dismounting. Now, in Witcher 3, Geralt has 3 different animations each for mounting and dismounting. There's from the left, from the right, and from the back. Traditionally, you would always mount from the left, which is just a general rule of English riding, hence why the left side of the horse is called the near side and the right is the off side. And those are the terms that I use all the time in the horse world. You put on the bridle and saddle from the left. When you catch a horse in a field, you do it from the left if you can. Just generally, the horse world likes left-handed people. Except for Polo, but we'll get to that later. That said, you do have to learn to do things from the right, like mounting and dismounting in the case of emergencies and stuff. But it's not something you would typically do unless a situation really called for it. And let me tell you, when you have getting on and off from the left built into your muscle memory, getting on and off from the right is hard. All the strength of the jump when you get on is in your left leg, and all the strength of the swing over the back of the saddle when you get off is in your right. And these use completely different muscle sets, and so when you reverse them, the results are often interesting. And I say that from experience. In the context of The Witcher 3 though, being able to get on from both sides, I'll talk about the back in a minute, makes perfect sense, both game design wise and lore wise. From a gameplay standpoint, you need to be able to hop on and off whenever you need, so you have the 3 angles for convenience. From an in-universe standpoint, Geralt needs to be able to get on and off quickly since he's in dangerous situations all the time. It doesn't really matter which way. Now, the animations themselves intrigue me because normally when you get on, you would put your left foot into the stirrup, hands on the front of the saddle, and jump up that way. But Geralt doesn't do that, as you can see. He just kind of throws himself up there, and it's all in the arms. Which, like, he must have all the upper body strength in the world to be able to pull off mounts like that again and again. But then, I guess, if you're as jacked as he is, that wouldn't be a problem. Getting on from the back is a different matter entirely, though. I mean, it is possible, but you would only ever attempt this with a horse you know and trust with your life. Because directly behind the horse is a blind spot, and if you run up and jump on from there, most horses would likely spook. On top of that, you would need either a lot of momentum or a lot of upper body strength to be able to pull this off, since horses can be pretty tall. Also, it's a minor nitpick, but you would definitely not be able to do this with the saddles in this game. That just wouldn't work. But then, I think they forgo a bit of realism here just for the sake of convenience with the gameplay, which I can understand. And same goes from dismounting from the back, which Geralt does if you dismount while moving fast. If you did this in real life, you'd probably end up with injured legs at the very least, so yeah, don't try that at home, kids. Some of my favourite details in the horse mechanics can be seen when Geralt rides. My first example is when you gallop. As you can see here, he leans forward into a sort of half seat, which you would do when you gallop because it lessens the weight on the horse's back and allows them to open up their stride. It's the reason why jockeys stand up in the saddle when they're racing. Another detail, which is probably my favourite, is that Geralt doesn't actually sit squarely in the saddle, even when he's in a half seat. You can see here that he is actually leaning into his left stirrup, which I find super interesting since I literally do the exact opposite in real life. Which has me wondering if how you sit in the saddle is relevant to your dominant hand, since I'm left-handed and Geralt is obviously right-handed. Yeah, I don't know if for certain if that's a thing, so don't quote me on that, but it's interesting. Yeah. One thing that really bugs me though is that Geralt's reins are always completely slack. Now, I don't know if this is drawn from medieval style or not, but even in polo, where you control by neck reining, you still have a slight contact with the horse's mouth. Your reins aren't completely loose. So my guess is that they either took inspiration from Western and stock riding for this, or they just didn't want to animate a rein contact, which I can respect, because rope physics are finicky enough as it is, so applying them to a constantly moving entity would probably be a giant pain in the ass. But I don't know anything about making video games, so yeah. Now, this is the area of these mechanics that I probably know the least about, and since nobody rides with swords these days, I can't really say how realistic they are. However, since I do have a bit of experience playing polo, I'll try to relate them to that instead. So in polo, the style of riding is very different to normal English riding. You have two sets of reins, which you hold in your left hand and move up and around the horse's neck to steer. And your mallet is always in your right hand, which sucks for left-handed people, yay! And you have several different types of swing that you can use. There's half shot, which is your basic swing from low down, and full shot, which is when you have your mallet up and swing in a full circle. You can do both of these in several different directions. You've got offside forehand, offside backhand, near side fore and backhand. Offside is much easier, given that you don't have to lean over the horse's neck to do it. Yeah. But in the context of Witcher 3, Geralt pretty much always swings with a full shot on both sides of the horse. And I guess with a sword, you pretty much always want maximum power on a swing, so it makes sense. I mean, it would have been cool to see him maybe use a half shot when moving slower, but it's a really small nitpick, which I'm not really all that bothered about. An annoyingly realistic thing, on the other hand, is how fucking hard it is to hit anything when moving fast. I mean, this is why in polo, you always slow your horse when you have to hit the ball. You can actually do this in Witcher 3, but it's very annoying when you're trying to get somewhere, and going in and out of gallop constantly can get quite tiresome, so I generally didn't bother with that. Mounted combat is a hard thing to implement, and they did a great job all things considered, especially with the slow-mo mechanic that they introduced in Blood and Wine, which made it much easier to hit things, which was really great. The archery is something I won't comment on, as I know nothing about mounted archery in real life, and that is a whole other sport of its own, so yeah. Someone else can talk about that, just not me. So yeah, that's about everything I can think of when it comes to comparing Witcher 3's horse mechanics to real life. I hope you guys enjoyed my rambly thoughts on this, and I'm also going to be doing a video on Dragon Age Inquisition's horse mechanics quite soon, as there is a fair bit to unpack there. So yeah, until then, peace, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!